Today we have a presentation by Danielle Mieler, and I believe Victor Flores will be here as well. And they will be talking about the Oakland Alameda Adaptation Committee. So Danielle is the Sustainability and Resilience Manager for the City of Alameda, where she's responsible for equitably implementing the city's climate action and resilience plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change. She brings extensive experience to the work from her past roles in local and regional resilience planning. She previously managed San Francisco's Lifelines Council, Earthquake Safety Implementation Program and Tall Buildings Study, and the Association of Bay Area Governments Resilience Program. She received a bachelor's and master's science degree in civil engineering from UC Berkeley and a BA in sociology from UC Santa Barbara. I'm sorry, Santa Cruz. Sorry about that, Danielle. And then we'll have Victor Flores. He's an East Bay political strategist with 6 years of experience in infrastructure, community engagement, electoral campaigns, and advocacy at Greenbelt Alliance. He leads the Oakland Alameda Adaptation Committee's community engagement, green workforce initiatives. He facilitates the Community Coalition for a Sustainable Concord and manages various relationships across Alameda and Contra Costa counties. So with that, we'll turn it over to Danielle then to begin the presentation.
Great. Thanks so much for having me and Victor here today. We're excited to share with you the work we're doing on the Oakland and Alameda shoreline for sea level rise adaptation. So I'm going to start with just kind of an overview project or presentation of the issues and then the projects that we're doing. And Victor is going to dive into our community engagement strategy and activities. So I'll just share my screen. So this is a photo, just to start, of our Oakland Alameda Adaptation Committee. I will go into it more, but I've been having some meetings on the shoreline. So this is when we met during King Tide at Jack London Square. So we're addressing multiple hazards on the shoreline. We have sea level rise. Rising and emergent groundwater is a really significant issue on this low-lying shoreline. Of course, winter storms and localized flooding, as well as liquefaction, which is a particular issue on many of our mainland around the Alameda and Oakland shorelines, where we've had historic fill that's subject to liquefaction. Our sea level rise design targets, we're looking at planning for sea level rise to 2 feet of sea level rise by 2080. That gets us to about a 14-foot elevation. And then we're also planning for 5 feet by 2100, which gets us to elevation about 17 feet. Much of our shoreline currently is in the 10 to 12 foot range. We even have some 8 and 9 foot elevations. And you can see here on the map with 2 feet of sea level rise on top of a 100-year storm, showing where we have overtopping of the shoreline especially in the pink. We have in some areas where we really have more than 5 feet that would be overtopping with just 2 feet of sea level rise. So we have a pretty vulnerable shoreline, very low lying, and also a very developed shoreline. So it's a big challenge for us, and we're trying to be proactive and start as early as we can. We also know, as many of you do, that there's a significant funding need for this work, and this is BCBC's study showing that the cost for the entire region to adapt to sea level rise through 2050 was $110 billion, with $22 billion for Alameda County, and region-wide, BCBC estimates that we have about $5.5 billion in existing revenue, so a pretty significant gap. We have been looking really aggressively at federal funding as our primary way to fund that gap locally, both with FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers. This is just showing our groundwater rise map. With 2 feet of sea level rise, we have some areas that would be expected to have emergent groundwater or some permanent flooding, and a lot of areas where groundwater is within just a couple feet of the of the surface. Liquefaction, again, as I said, lots of areas of man-made fill that are subject to liquefaction, very similar areas that are vulnerable to sea level rise. And then we have winter storms, localized flooding. We have ongoing erosion issues on the shoreline. This picture on the top is showing Doolittle Drive by Oakland Airport. On a high tide or king tide day, the water is just right at the edge of that roadway there. So we have some near-term issues that we need to address as well. And we also have vulnerable communities. We have some a lot of historic redline communities in this area people who are living at or below the poverty line and face other social vulnerability issues. And so we need to address those issues, those today issues for those communities as well and their priorities as we go through this process. So we formed the Oakland Alameda Adaptation Committee about 2021. So we've been together for about 3 years now. And we're working together to coordinate flood and sea level rise adaptation projects. We're also trying to have multi-benefits of restoring water quality and habitat, improving our recreation on the shoreline and community resilience. And we're using the San Francisco Bay Adaptation Atlas's operational landscape unit, where they defined sort of the unit in terms of scientifically based on watersheds and wave movement and other, what is the kind of the best unit and area for large scale adaptation planning. So ours is really from the Bay Bridge down to just south of the airport in Oakland and Alameda. And we think there's a lot of benefits to this kind of a multi-jurisdictional or sub-regional approach. We know that water doesn't respect jurisdictional boundaries. It allows us to collaborate rather than compete with each other. We get some benefits of scale and being able to do a little bit of a bigger project, especially as we're going after those federal funds. We hope that it allows us to expedite our projects and really we're working towards consensus-driven outcomes. We think that it's more attractive for grant funding, and we are going to be pursuing development of the sub-regional adaptation plans that are now required by SB 272 through this committee. Our project partners, these are our steering committee members. We have a much larger group that participate in a quarterly forum that we hold, really open to any interested parties, but our primary project partners and steering committee members consist of these agencies here, as well as our community partners. And we're really proud that we are funding these community partners with our grant funds to be, active and equal participants with our consultant team. So we really are, our approach is we have our community partners, we have our consultants, and then we have our agencies, and we're all kind of working together to deliver these projects. And I'll tell you about those in a minute. So we have 3 funded projects that we're working on right now. A sub-regional adaptation plan. I mentioned that the goal of that is to meet the requirements of SB 272. We have an Oakland Alameda Estuary adaptation project that's funded by Caltrans, and it's looking near the Posey Webster tubes that connect Jacqueline Square with Alameda. And then our Bay Farm Island adaptation project, which is both the Alameda Bay Farm shoreline as well as the Oakland Airport area. So just to go over the projects real quickly, this is our sub-regional plan. We are looking out to 2100 in this plan and trying to identify for each reach of shoreline, what are the near-term, kind of medium-term and long-term actions that we need to take over time. And really we're trying to take a pathways approach. So not that we're going to be making, finite decisions for 2100, but that we'll be thinking about what can we do today to set us up to be in a better position to be making, have more options, and more decisions that we can make in the later years. So trying to leave as many options on the table and trying to prioritize nature-based solutions and green infrastructure as much as possible. We have some critical wetlands and marsh areas, the Arrowhead Marsh, LC Romer Shoreline, Crab Cove and Crown Beach, and some areas that we really want to enhance and continue to provide those kinds of resources to the region for natural habitat, as well as a lot of recreation that we want to continue to support. This is showing the area of our Oakland Alameda Estuary Adaptation Project. So this is kind of the area of the shoreline shown in the yellow, and then also considering some of the upland areas as well, because those contribute to our inland drainage and flooding issues. So we're in the process right now looking to go to City Council for approval of a design concept this January. And then we are pursuing a U.S. Army Corps Water Resources Development Act funding to continue this project, and hoping to hear about an earmark from our congressional earmark for this project, to continue this project as well. So this is just showing our federal request. This is the sort of rough estimate for the completion of the entire project, almost $89 million. On Bay Farm Island, so this is Bay Farm Island. If you're not familiar, there's the Oakland Airport kind of right there. This is Doolittle Drive that comes in along the airport. We are also looking at developing some near-term fixes for the northern waterfront. Right here, we have some low spots at Veterans Court where this bridge from the main island of Alameda comes in, and a low spot where this lagoon, we have these storm drain kind of lagoons on Bay Farm and Alameda. So those are two low spots that are contributing to flooding. That flooding does impact the Oakland Airport, and flooding from Doolittle Drive overtopping by the Oakland Airport also impacts Bay Farm Island. So we're really hydraulically connected to one another, and so really working together. So this initial project with an earmark from Congresswoman Barbara Lee is allowing us to develop designs for these two near-term locations, as well as think about what the longer-term plan for this entire northern shoreline might be. And then as a next step, we have applied to, and looks promising to receive, a FEMA BRIC grant, the Building Resilience and Infrastructure Grant, to address both these two low spots in Alameda, as well as the Doolittle Drive area. And the Oakland Airport is in a community disaster resilient zone. So that was prioritized for funding by FEMA, and also only required a 10% match instead of the normal 25% match. So we're pursuing that. It's a $55 million project, 6 components. So we have a couple of components in Alameda, the Doolittle Drive, Oakland Airport area, and then also improvements to Arrowhead Marsh, as well as some storm drain and flooding improvements to the Columbian Gardens neighborhood in Oakland. It's been recommended for further review by FEMA, and that's going to be a multi-agency project with the City of Oakland, the Port of Oakland, the City of Alameda, East Bay Regional Parks, and Caltrans. And so we're starting to work right now to kind of figure out what the governance and coordination is going to look like for delivering that project for FEMA, should we receive the final funding. So this is just the breakdown of our BRIC grant request. We've been having a lot of informational workshops and community meetings to talk about the projects and the concepts and kind of the need for adaptation. That's been a really positive process. We've been holding them on different parts of the shorelines in Oakland and Alameda. And in terms of next step, we're completing alternatives to our 2 projects, and we have another round of outreach coming up in early December. In 2025, we're going to be finalizing and improving our concept designs and formalizing the governance structure, and then looking to secure the funding to begin to finish design and begin construction, hopefully later in 2025 and moving into 2030. So I'm actually going to stop there. We are just looking at governance. As I mentioned, we're looking to develop an MOU for our 2 projects where we can share resources among our partner agencies. But I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Victor to talk with you about some of the really innovative work we've been doing on our community engagement process with our funded community partners.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share my slides. I won't share too many. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
So here are some of our partners and partner organizations. We have Marquita Price, Hood Planning Group. We have a few folks like Dana and Lauren from CASA, which is focused on Alameda, and then Shy Walker from Ninth Route, Corinna Gold from the Segurate Land Trust are Indigenous partners. And Shan, we just transitioned out from the Reef Climate Center, but if you're familiar with Jonathan DeLong and the Reef Climate Center, we have them on board as well. A couple of things that we did around community engagement were, one, the traditional tabling, outreach. Of course, there were the workshops. We had a survey for the first round of engagement that not only served to help us identify priorities from residents, but also to use that as a funnel into our communications list. And I'll share some of the results in a little bit. But up to this date, we've done about 20 community engagement events, from tabling, workshops, walks, etc. We have started to pivot a little bit more to more creative forms of outreach because of some of the challenges that we found. So when you look at the survey results, when you look at the engagement that we found, a vast majority of those folks, the respondents and people who attended the workshops, happen to be from Alameda, and more specifically, I think even from Alameda, most of them were from Bayform Island, which makes sense because Bayform Island has significant risk of sea level rise. So with the Oakland focused workshops, what we found is that very few people showed up. We worked with an interpreter who helped get Spanish speaking residents to those meetings. But even then, there was a lot to be desired as far as turnout. So the purpose of pivoting to more creative forms of engagement, such as sea level bingo nights, sea level trivia, with some of the senior folks and reaching out to senior centers, is one of the directions that we're heading into. The responses that we have gotten from Oakland residents is that they just don't see the connection between the shoreline and how it impacts them. And part of that reason is, between San Leandro Bay or Estuary, you have significant barriers such as 880, San Leandro Boulevard, the industrial areas in Deep East Oakland, the Coliseum. So those pieces of infrastructure help to create this sense that they're completely disconnected from the shoreline. So that's one of the issues that we want to address in our upcoming community engagement. We do have the 2 workshops that are coming up in December. Registration details will be out soon. So if anybody's interested in engaging there, we definitely welcome it. But as far as the outreach for Oakland, we're also planning to work with APEN on a Chinese specific language community workshop. That one would have to be in person, just because of the concerns about interpretation, making sure that it's accessible. And we do hope to do that at the Lincoln Recreation Center, which the city of Oakland and APEN are also turning into a resilience hub. So we get that added benefit as well. So those are some of the things that we've been trying to address in order to get a broad amount of community engagement, just because of the issues that are, the impacts are also going to impact Oakland. But the residents there aren't fully prepared for it. And we want to make sure they're as engaged as possible as well. For us as the community partners, our primary objectives are not only to coordinate between all the groups. So Greenbelt coordinates all of our partners, but every organization has their own separate work plans. They're doing their own they're doing the regular jobs on top of helping with this. And some of the organizations also volunteer based. They're funded through, or they're funded differently. So we have to manage all of those things as well. We also want to make sure that we're focusing on the equity and social justice component, being on the ground and working with these communities. And we want to make sure that whatever outcomes for the Bay and the communities, that they are moving forward and not following the same mistakes of the past. And in our community engagement, part of that is not just to seek input, but also to do public education so that we maintain transparency and are inclusive as possible in all of those communities, which is why we're reaching out to Spanish and Chinese specific communities. And then we're prioritizing that education, which is how we came about to doing the game nights that are educational and informative, so that people can learn along in the process while we're sharing information and getting that feedback. And then fostering collaboration. It's not just our community partners, but other organizations, whether it's your HOA, marina, nonprofit partners. We're trying to work with as many people as possible because there's just so much ground to cover. The handful of community partners by ourselves, we can't do it all. So I'll stop there and see if we have any questions. I know we only had a few 20 minutes or so, right?
Yeah, why don't we raise hands if you have any questions? I've got one for for Victor and Danielle. Is there any, you've mentioned partnerships, collaboration. Is there any, are there any ongoing meetings, efforts with the private sector, for example, businesses that operate, private sector businesses along the shoreline as part of your kind of your objectives and your vision for moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. We have especially in our estuary project, a lot of areas, especially on the Alameda side, that are privately owned. And so we've been having, now that we're at the stage where we're starting to develop alternatives and concepts, we have had one-on-one meetings with, I think, every property owner on the shoreline so far, to share with them kind of what we're looking at for alternatives and to learn kind of what their plans are. We know some of them are thinking about redevelopment on the shoreline, which is really the best scenario for adaptation, for them to do it as part of a redevelopment project. The most opportunity there to incorporate adaptation, but it's also useful to find out whether they have no plans for redevelopment in the future, or so we've been having those meetings, which has been really helpful. And then I mentioned that we have our quarterly kind of open meetings, and we have often 60 or 80 people that are attending those meetings, and it's really intended to be any interested stakeholder that can attend and sort of learn about what we're doing on the shoreline. So we have some of the businesses who have shoreline properties have been attending those meetings as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. Okay, we have hands raised by Bob Whitley and Dave. We'll start with Bob.
Thank you, and compliment you and your colleagues for the work you're doing. It's long term, but the risk is great, as well as the cost. So thank you for your efforts and sharing what you're trying to do. But so you're not the only shoreline. So are there similar activities going on other East Bay communities? Are you the first? Are you the model?
No, I think that we know that there are other shoreline planning efforts going on. Hayward, the Hayward Area Shoreline Planning Agency, HASPA, has been doing this work for a really long time. I know the city of San Leandro is doing an adaptation plan right now. The East Bay Crescent Operational Landscape Unit, which is basically West Oakland and Emeryville, I know they've started coordinating in a similar style to what we've been doing on the East Bay. I think there's some shoreline planning efforts in the Richmond area as well. And then I know in Marin County around San Rafael, there's been some work that's been going on for a long time, especially around the Canal District. And then, of course, the Port of San Francisco and their shoreline planning and resilience work. And then in San Mateo, One Shoreline is the agency that's doing comprehensive flooding for the San Mateo County shoreline. And then I also know Santa Clara County, the county is leading some planning efforts and collaborative planning efforts there. So I think there's a lot happening with SB 272. In Contra Costa County, thanks, Jody. SB 272 is going to be requiring shoreline adaptation plans from every jurisdiction that touches the shoreline, similar to the local coastal plans that coastal communities are already required to do. So that is starting to kind of come online. We're reviewing guidance documents right now that BCDC is developing. And they are encouraging multi-jurisdictional planning and trying to plan at a larger scale. So I think this is going to be happening a lot more. And maybe Jody wants to talk a little bit about what's happening in Contra Costa County, so it's so relevant to many of you.
I'm actually going to have my colleague Nicole Shimizu talk about it because she is directly involved and I'm tangentially involved. Nicole, is that okay? Can you speak up?
Sure, yeah. So like Jody put in the chat, we got an almost $1.5 million grant from the Ocean Protection Council. Our vision is to develop a plan that's compliant with SB 272 and is, congruent with the work that's happening from BCDC's Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, like Danielle was mentioning. So we are in the middle of getting the grant execution documents from the Ocean Protection Council before we officially start work, but I think our first steps will be to onboard a technical sub-consultant as well as a community engagement sub-consultant. And then over the next 2 years, we hope to have the Contra Costa Resilient Shoreline Plan ready to go. And so that one will include, adaptation pathways and kind of dig a little bit more into the operational landscape units that are within the 90 miles of shoreline that Contra Costa County has.
Okay, let's move to Dave Requa. The next question.
Yeah, thanks, George. I was wondering whether East Bay Mud is in the coalition. They're in Oakland, and they've been particularly concerned about their wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, we've been coordinating with them and working with them. The treatment plan is not in the area of one of our 2 near-term projects at this time, but they are part of the long-term shoreline plan. And yeah, we've been coordinating with them.
Okay. Any other questions? So Jody London, did you have an additional comment or anyone on your team that would like to comment?
We heard from Nicole about the work that we're doing. We're really excited about the opportunities that we have through this Ocean Protection Council grant. It's going to allow us to meet our requirement under the new state law. And we are really looking forward to working with all of you. We'd be happy to come talk about this with East Bay Leadership Council, probably in the new year. As Nicole mentioned, we're still working out some of the contractual agreements and so on. And once we get our contract signed with Ocean Protection Council, we need to enter into agreements with the cities along the shoreline. But we are really impressed by the amazing work you're doing in Alameda, Danielle and Victor. It's super exciting. And I think we're going to just reserve an opportunity to come consult with you whenever we need to, if that's okay, because you've done a lot of great.
Of course. Yeah, we'd love to talk.
Okay. And then Bob Whitley has his hand raised.
So the classic question is, how can or should East Bay Leadership Council become engaged other than being educated?
I'm going to let Victor, I don't know if you want to take that one, but I think, we have mailing lists, we have quarterly meetings. If there's particular areas of the shoreline that they want to focus on, we can engage there. We're also always open for presentations like this one. Victor, do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to drop in the chat the community partners website that has a newsletter sign up. I think just staying informed is the first step. I think that if you want to participate in some of the engagement events, that would also be great. I think it'd be, I don't know how many other people have done educational sea level rise game nights. So you can be part of that and see how successful it is or how we can improve it. I think that would be a different pace than your average workshop. So I would definitely recommend that. We've also had a bunch of different interesting events like tabling at Band the Loops. If you haven't been to Band the Loop in Alameda, I heard it was quite the event. So definitely, if you're in the area, you can also attend one of the walks with our partners, CASA. They do walks around not just the shoreline, but also some of the parks. So I would also recommend that. And then you can also just reach out to me. I'll drop my cell phone and see how we can plug you in.
Yeah, EVLC sorry, just really quick. EVLC has a lot of communications channels. So if there are specific events or community engagement opportunities you'd like us to promote, you can send me an email and I'll share it with our larger membership. A lot of these events sound like they'd be really interesting to our members and very educational. And you know, on top of that, we also do have an advocacy arm. So if there's like projects you need letters of support for, that's something we can do as well. But it seems like if largely what you're needing is communication, we can also do that. So just reach out to me.
Good. I see.
That's great. Thank you.
Bob Brown has his hand raised. Bob.
Now, this is like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of an off the wall, 30,000 foot, just kind of an optics question. And I don't know who can respond to this, but it's more, and I realize it's apples and oranges, but since you're looking at a lot of, federal intervention on this issue, and then setting aside however the election goes in 3 weeks, if you just look at the United States and people are seeing these visuals of North Carolina and Florida and Tennessee and all these places kind of overcome, and I know that's hurricane related. Is it hard for, a West Coast type of position to talk about sea level rise and try to garner that kind of attention from the federal government? I don't know if that question makes sense, but I'm just thinking in terms of the optics.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question. We know from some of the sea level rise projections and from what we've experienced that the East Coast and the Gulf Coast are experiencing sea level rise earlier than we are and more significantly than we are in the West Coast. So we're a little bit kind of slower, which I think is good for us. We can learn from what's happening on the Gulf Coast, what's happening on the East Coast, what's happening in Florida. They've been at this for like decades. Miami has been a leader for a long time. So I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of learn from what's happening in those areas. And like you said, they're being hit by hurricanes, which is not our issue, but we will be having more significant and stronger storms and storm surge and coastal flooding in the future. So I think that part of what we need to do, and part of what I hope we're doing through this BCDC Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan, is having an opportunity to sort of speak with one voice across an entire region to make that case to the federal government that we have significant assets here, significant resources, significant value at risk, and things of national interest that need to be protected, and that we need that federal funding and support to do that here as well as in the other regions. So I think that hopefully the shoreline adaptation plan, that'll be one of the big outcomes, is sort of being able to take a more comprehensive look of the entire Bay shoreline to make that case federally.
Yeah. Thanks, Danielle.
George, question?
Yes, Linus.
Yeah, thanks. This is great information. Really appreciate the presentation. And with respect to partnering and funding and so forth, I know that we're very much in a planning discussion here. It's interesting. Washington Post, just as an aside, today had an article with a scroll, not exactly pure science, but at what level of risk is your county? And you can go through, and obviously, you're worse off in shoreline Louisiana than Contra Costa or Alameda County. So we're in sort of a medium to low risk, and that's going to play out with federal funding, and obviously politics is going to play into that as well. But I'm just wondering, is there some strategy where you might inventory projects that are already underway? We're involved with a number of them, as are other land trusts and the like, where we could sort of coalesce to your point, sort of the portfolio of initiatives that are synergizing these fixed and typically to sort of a 5-foot equation on sea level rise and the like. I mean, we would be very interested in having that data and to collaborate with, that inventory to make the case.
Linus
I would
Danielle,
recommend.
can I take a quick stab at this? Linus?
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to someone at BCDC because they are preparing that inventory, and they contact us every year and they say, hey, what's changed with your inventory? And we give them what we know. But since the retirement of Paul Detchens from our Public Works Department, he was just like a walking encyclopedia of that. If you don't mind, I'll introduce you to the folks at BCDC, and they'd be loving to talk with you, I'm sure. And then Danielle may have more to add. I'm sorry to jump in, but I just
I
had
was just
to
going
say
to
that.
Oh, Jody, you cut out.
Well, I was just going to say that we have a lot of interactivity with BCDC, and yeah, I get that. I think that's another example of how we may all be sort of triangulating with some of the permitting agencies, some of those that really are driving this initiative with good science, and some sort of collective amongst us as to that inventory of information and projects could be really helpful. And I think that might be a better bottom-up sort of strategy than relying on a very large agency with all of its responsibilities like BCDC to be the collection house, as it were. I mean, it would be good to be having more direct interactivity with City of Alameda and Contra Costa County and so forth. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can have a lot of direct coordination, but BCDC is they are the collection warehouse right now for the regional shoreline adaptation project. So like Jody said, they're collecting that information from cities and counties on a regular basis. And that is what's informing so I put a link in the chat to their funding and investment framework. It's informing what the collective need is and what's already funded and where there's funding gaps. So if you have projects to add to that, I would recommend reaching out to BCDC because they are the clearinghouse currently, and there's a mapping effort, another link in the chat. But then I think, of course, having those kind of direct one-on-one conversations is really helpful too. But I do think that BCDC is kind of the place to hold all of that information regionally.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I think we are adjourned for today, and really a great meeting. Thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, thanks Danielle and Victor for being here, and everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it.